Winchester introduced the .270 in 1925, and American hunters never looked at a 7mm rifle the same way again. Because it arrived first, and first means becoming the standard against which every competitor gets measured, sometimes for generations, regardless of technical merit. Winchester knew what it had. Through the 1930s and 40s, the company invested heavily in keeping the .270 in front of the American hunting public. Jack O'Connor, the most widely read gunwriter of his era, became the cartridge's most famous advocate, writing about it in Outdoor Life for decades in language that made the .270 sound less like a commercial product and more like the inevitable conclusion of rifle science. By the time Remington finally decided to challenge it, the .270 had 32 years of loyal customers, established factory loads at every ammunition counter, and a cultural grip on the American hunter's imagination that was going to be nearly impossible to break. It was not a cartridge anymore. It was the accepted answer to the question of what a serious American hunting rifle was chambered for. Any competitor that wanted that shelf space would have to arrive with something undeniably better, and it would have to arrive performing at its potential from the first day it hit the counter. Remington came to the fight in 1957 with the .280 Remington. The case was identical in lineage to the .270, both necked from the same .30-06 parent, but sized to push 7mm, .284 4-inch bullets, instead of the .270's .277. 7mm projectiles offered higher sectional density at the top of the weight range. They carried more efficiently at distance. On a ballistic chart drawn honestly, the .280 was the better design for the job, capable of pushing heavier bullets farther and hitting harder at the ranges where elk and mule deer lived in the western country that defined the American hunting tradition. Remington then proceeded to guarantee it could not prove any of that. They chambered the .280 first in the Model 740 autoloader. Semi-automatic actions of that era required conservative chamber pressures to cycle reliably, so Remington's factory ammunition was loaded well below what the cartridge was capable of. The .270 Winchester, designed from the start for bolt actions and loaded accordingly, ran hotter in velocity tests throughout the late 1950s. The cartridge designed to dethrone the .270 trailed it. Reviewers noticed. Hunters noticed. And the .280 Remington acquired a reputation for mediocrity it had done nothing to earn, built entirely on the gap between what the cartridge could do and what Remington had chosen to load it to. Winchester's .270 did not have to do a thing to win that round. Remington had kneecapped its own challenger before the match started. Out in Trinidad, Colorado, a gunsmith named Parker Otto Ackley was watching all of this with professional irritation. Ackley had started gunsmithing in Oregon in 1936, before the war interrupted everything. By 1945, he had a new shop in Trinidad and was building a reputation as one of the most rigorous firearms experimenters in the country. He was not a marketer or a salesman. He was a measurer. He ran pressure experiments. He tested bolt thrust across cartridge designs. He documented what happened when headspace shifted and published the results in language any serious shooter could verify. What he found was frequently inconvenient for established narratives. The Japanese Arisaka action, which American gunshop culture had dismissed as crude and inferior, tested as one of the strongest military bolt actions of the early 20th century when Ackley evaluated it alongside 18 others. The Winchester Model 94's slab sides flexed under pressure, but sprang back, a structural behavior that had generated campfire arguments for years. His methods were instruments and documentation, not repetition of received opinion. His cartridge philosophy was equally disciplined. Commercial rounds of the mid-20th century typically featured generous body taper and shallow shoulder angles. Sensible design conventions that made manufacturing forgiving and extraction smooth, but that also meant brass moved under pressure. It stretched toward the bolt face, required frequent trimming, and converted case capacity into mechanical waste rather than driving gas. Ackley's approach was to minimize body taper and steepen the shoulder dramatically to 40 degrees, creating a hard datum that gripped the chamber wall on firing rather than sliding back against the bolt face. Brass stretched less, cases lasted longer. And in the blown-out improved configuration, the case held more powder in the same overall length, producing measurable velocity gains over the parent cartridge at the same or lower pressure. It was geometry, not guesswork, and it worked on every cartridge he applied it to. He had been doing this for years before the .280 Remington appeared. Improved versions of the .30-30, the .30-06, dozens of others. When the .280 arrived in 1957, both Ackley and Fred Huntington, the founder of RCB's reloading equipment, saw the same opportunity. Huntington developed a version with a 35-degree shoulder and called it the .280 RCBs. Ackley examined that design and steepened the shoulder to 40 degrees, arriving at what he called the .280 Ackley Improved 40 degrees. The finished design had a quality that distinguished it from most Wildcats: backward compatibility. A standard .280 Remington factory round could be loaded into an Ackley Improved chamber and fired safely. The brass would fireform on the first shot, blowing out to fill the sharper shoulder, converting a box of factory ammunition into proper Ackley spec brass at the cost of one trip to the range. No proprietary brass required. No exotic sourcing. Any competent gunsmith with the right reamer could rechamber an existing bolt rifle, and the owner could run standard .280 Remington ammunition until he had enough formed cases to begin hand-loading the improved version. Ackley built the transition pathway into the design itself. The performance case was direct, roughly 100 feet per second faster than the standard .280 at matched bullet weights and equal pressure. At its ceiling, the .280 Ackley Improved approached the 7mm Remington Magnum in downrange energy, without the Magnum's belted case, without its recoil, fitting neatly into any rifle designed around the standard .30 or 6-length action. One more round in the magazine. Longer case life. Less barrel erosion because the efficient design needed less powder to reach what the Magnum achieved through sheer volume and pressure. For a handloader willing to invest the time, the arithmetic was hard to argue with. None of that arithmetic interested the major manufacturers. A Wildcat, unlicensed, outside SARMI specifications, with no factory loading available. Lived in the world of custom gun shops and hand-loading benches, not in the sporting goods stores where most Americans bought their hunting ammunition. In 1962, Remington introduced the 7mm Remington Magnum, which effectively ended the market conversation before it could begin. The Magnum offered comparable downrange energy in a factory-loaded package that Remington could push through every distributor and catalog it operated. American hunters who had just watched the .280 Remington stumble chose the packaged option. The .280 Ackley Improved retreated into the underground of hand-loading publications and custom chambers. Precisely the territory where Winchester's cultural dominance ensured it would remain invisible to the mass market indefinitely. Ackley continued his work without apparent bitterness. He authored 2 substantial volumes titled Handbook for Shooters and Reloaders through Pioneer Press in Utah, which became standard references in American gunsmithing for decades. He taught at Trinidad State Junior College. He contributed to Guns and Ammo and Shooting Times with the same methodical honesty he applied to every test in his shop. The .280 Ackley Improved appeared in those pages as documented result, specific velocity figures, measured pressures, cartridge dimensions on the record. Not a manufacturer's promise, a gunsmith's measurement. The .280 Remington, meanwhile, continued its strange commercial existence. By the late 1970s, sales had lagged badly enough that Remington made a desperate move. In 1979, they renamed the cartridge the 7mm Express Remington, attempting to trade on the 7mm Magnum's market prestige. The plan collapsed almost immediately. Hunters began asking whether the 7mm Express was safe in their Magnum rifles. Confusion spread through gun shops and hunting camps across the country. 2 years later, in 1981, Remington quietly restored the .280 Remington name, having accomplished nothing except 2 years of market confusion and confirmation that the parent cartridge's commercial reputation was a problem renaming could not solve. Winchester's .270, unbothered by any of this, continued to hold the shelf space and the cultural authority that made the entire 7mm category feel like a permanent also ran. Ackley died in August of 1989 in Salt Lake City at 86 years old. The cartridge bore his name. It was still, officially, an unauthorized Wildcat. In the custom rifle world, however, it had been accumulating a reputation that no advertising budget could replicate, because it was built entirely from performance. A rifle builder named Kenny Jarrett, working in South Carolina, had constructed his business around what he called beanfield rifles, bolt-action hunting rifles built to exceptional accuracy tolerances and designed for the long. Open shots across wide, cultivated southern fields where a deer might stand 300 yards out with no second chance. Jarrett championed the .280 Ackley Improved loudly and persistently. He put it in his most accurate builds and talked about it to every writer and hunter who came through his door. The rifle press began paying attention. Accuracy tests on Jarrett's Beanfield builds consistently produced sub-minute of angle groups, results that serious hunters recognized as meaningful, and the cartridge driving those groups was a Wildcat that Winchester's market dominance had effectively kept off every factory shelf in America. Jarrett's endorsement carried the specific weight that factory marketing cannot manufacture. It came from a man staking his commercial reputation on a round with no corporate sponsor and no advertising budget. The cartridge moved through serious hunting circles on results alone, passed from one handloader to the next across decades. Winchester's .270 had the shelf space, the factory loads, and O'Connor's long shadow still falling across the hunting press well into the 1980s. None of it could make the .280 Ackley Improved disappear. Custom shops kept chambering it. Handloaders kept forming brass, working up loads, and reporting that the numbers held. The performance Ackley had measured in Trinidad in the late 1950s held up across elk country, sheep country, and the wide fields of the South, because it was built from data, and data does not expire. Toward the end of the first decade of the 2000s, ammunition manufacturer Nosler began the formal process of bringing the cartridge in from the cold. Nosler submitted the .280 Ackley Improved to the Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute, and in 2008, more than 50 years after Ackley and Huntington had worked out its dimensions in a Colorado gun shop, the cartridge received its official SARMI designation. The standardized version carried a slightly different headspace specification than Ackley's original Wildcat dimensions, a technical adjustment that generated discussion among reloaders who had built rifles to the earlier specs, and which major die makers addressed with separate product lines. The ballistic performance was unchanged. Nosler began producing factory ammunition and chambering factory rifles. Savage followed. Then Kimber, Cooper, Christensen Arms, and Ruger with a limited run of their #1 single shot. Hornady and Federal added factory loads of their own. The round that had survived more than half a century outside the system was suddenly listed in the same catalogues as the cartridges that had outsold and outmarketed it for decades. The Vindication has numbers behind it. A 140-grain bullet from a .280 Ackley Improved exits a 24-inch barrel at approximately 3,000 feet per second, within practical measuring distance of the 7mm Remington Magnum with the same bullet, from a lighter rifle with less recoil and one more round in the magazine. Hunters who have used both cartridges on comparable shots at comparable distances consistently report they cannot distinguish the terminal results. The Ackley accomplishes the same outcome with less powder, less heat, and less wear on the barrel and the shooter across a full season. And unlike the .270 Winchester, which still outsells it on name recognition and inertia alone, the .280 Ackley Improved does all of that while pushing bullets that carry more efficiently at distance than anything the .270's bore diameter can handle. The .270 dominated the conversation for nearly a century. The Ackley improved on the argument without raising its voice. Winchester held the ground for 50 years, not by defeating Ackley's cartridge on its merits, but by occupying the market so completely that the merits were never fairly tested. The .270 had the magazine covers, the factory shelves, and the weight of American gun culture behind it. None of that could change what happened when a handloader ran the numbers, formed a case, and sent a bullet downrange from an Ackley chambered rifle. The performance was there every time. In the end, it did not matter how long the industry waited. The .280 Ackley Improved survived on the strength of what it did in the field, and when it finally entered the catalogues, it arrived not as a newcomer seeking acceptance, but as a round that had already proven itself across half a century of unofficial use. That is a verdict that the market eventually caught up to 50 years late,